All right, good morning. This morning at the General Assembly, the Secretary General congratulated Professor Tijjani Mohammad Bande of Nigeria on his election as the president of the 74th session of the General Assembly of these United Nations. The Secretary General said that as a Nigerian and an African, the president-elect has invaluable insights into the continent's challenges and more broadly into the challenges our world faces across the three pillars of our work: peace, sustainable development, and human rights. He also thanked the current General Assembly President, María Fernanda Espinosa Garcés, for her outstanding work and her support of United Nations reform. This afternoon at 3 p.m., the Secretary General will speak at a meeting of the Fifth Committee to introduce his report containing measures to resolve the financial crisis facing the United Nations, and that meeting is open and will be webcast and will be circulating his remarks. And as a reminder that the Secretary General will travel to St. Petersburg in the Russian Federation tomorrow, and he will participate in the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum on Thursday. The theme of this year's forum is creating a sustainable development agenda. The Secretary General will be meeting with President Putin and senior Russian officials, as well as some other leaders attending the meeting. And he will be traveling back to New York on June 8th. And as a reminder, we will be closed tomorrow in observance of Eid. And we'll be back here on Thursday, but obviously available by phone should you need it. The Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammad is in London, where she spoke at Chatham House on a session concerning the legacy of the late former Secretary General, Kofi Annan. She said that one of the planks in his legacy, the Millennium Development Goals, spawned tremendous progress. She said the number of people living in less than $1.25 a day was reduced from 1.9 billion in 1990 to 836 million in 2015, the largest decline of its kind in human history. Yet much remains to be done to ensure the life and dignity for all, she said, adding that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Sustainable Development Goals have become a new rallying point. She also spoke at a panel on tackling inequality to unlock the power and potential of women and girls. She said with the right set of policies and institutions, inequality in all its forms, including gender inequality, can be curbed. She added that we need well-designed and targeted policies that enhance the opportunities of women to participate in economic activities and in political and public life. Her full remarks are online. The Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator, Ursula Mueller, is in Madagascar and has called for sustained aid and development support to help the country tackle food insecurity and preventable diseases, as well as to address the root causes of chronic poverty and underdevelopment. She's in Madagascar to see firsthand the humanitarian situation in the country, where at least 1.3 million people are severely food insecure, with 1/4 of them facing emergency-level food insecurity. Ms. Mueller visited the Grand Sud, Madagascar's region most affected by drought and food insecurity. She visited the Biebo Public Primary School, where, with UN support, mothers volunteered to cook school meals for more than 500 students enrolled there. With this being the only meal some of the children receive for the day. The UN is also providing water and sanitation assistance, with the help leading the school dropout rate from 23% to 12% this year. Tomorrow, she will lead a week-long Economic and Social Council mission to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi to see the government-led responses to tropical cyclones Idai in each country. And in Libya, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that following recent heavy rains and flooding in the southwestern part of the country, 2 people have died, 2,000 are displaced, and an estimated 20,000 people have been affected. The floods have caused houses to collapse, closed roads, and interrupted communication and electricity networks in most parts of the municipality. According to the World Health Organization, the General Hospital in Gat has been heavily affected, with some sections of the hospital flooded. Efforts to verify initial reports are ongoing, and the World Health Organization has adjusted additional stocks of medical supply at its southern hub, which could be mobilized with flood response. And ahead of the World Environment Day, which is tomorrow, the Secretary General issued a call for government to tackle air pollution, which is the focus of this year's celebrations. Air pollution kills some 7 million people each year. causes long-term health problems, and reduces children's cognitive development. According to World Bank, air pollution also costs societies more than $5 trillion a year. The Secretary General said tackling air pollution could be an opportunity that improves people's health and combats climate change and reduces greenhouse gas emissions, with policies such as phasing out coal-fired power plants and promoting less polluting industry, transport, and domestic fuels. My message to governments is clear: tax pollution, end fossil fuel subsidies, and stop building new coal plants. We need a green economy, not a gray economy, he said. After you're done with me and with Monica, at 1 p.m. as promised yesterday, there will be a briefing organized by UNRWA with Matthias Schmal, the director of UNRWA's operations in Gaza, and Gwyn Lewis, the director of UNRWA's operations in the West Bank. They will be here to brief you on UNRWA's the current humanitarian situation in the region. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions. Mr. Bays.
Two subject areas I'd like to ask you about. First, an update, if you have it, on any aspect of the situation in Khartoum. We see from media reports the death toll has risen sharply to 35 dead. The Security Council will be briefed this afternoon, I understand. What is the latest information that the UN has on the situation?
Sure. We're obviously following this situation extremely closely, and not only closely, but with great and increasing concern. I think, as you mentioned, the reports of continuing violence perpetrated against civilians and the rising number of casualties are very worrying. We again remind the Transitional Military Council of its duty to ensure the security and safety of citizens in Sudan and urge all parties to act with utmost restraint. This includes responsibility for upholding the human rights of all citizens, including the right to freedom of assembly and expression. It's very important that excessive force not be used. And I think one of the many issues, and one of this particular concern to us, are the reports of attacks on medical facilities and the blocking of medical facilities. Obviously, there needs to be unimpeded access to medical facilities.
And my second question is on another subject. I was somewhat surprised at the very end of the briefing yesterday when you were asked about the Tiananmen Square massacre. You said you had no particular comment. 24 hours on, perhaps you've had time to think about it. Does the Secretary-General have any comments on this very important anniversary?
Sure. I mean, I would remind you, in fact, as I've just said, of our constant call on security forces and governments not to use excessive force when facing civilian demonstrators.
So does he condemn the massacre 30 years ago and the fact there's been absolutely no accountability for those who ordered that massacre or carried it out?
I will leave it at that. Yes, ma'am.
Follow up on Sudan. So what do you wish the Council will... do you wish that the Council will have a statement to be unified to condemn the killing in Sudan, similar to what?
I mean, we're briefing the Council at the request of Council members. As always, it is very important for the Council to be united, especially when you're dealing with a crisis of this one. I don't want to preempt whatever the Council will decide to do. I don't know if they're planning to issue a statement or so forth. But we're basically briefing them. But I think it's important that the international community be united and send the same message of the need for a peaceful transition, and for our part, our continued support for the work of the African Union.
Follow up on that. So you said yesterday in the statement you read that you asked the authorities in Khartoum to investigate the killing. But as it looks right now, it doesn't look like they are going to do it. Is there any other mechanism you think that the UN or any other steps that the UN should take to have investigate the
I mean, I think the situation is ongoing, but it is clear that there needs to be accountability when there is the loss of life conducted by security forces. Mr. Barrett.
Thank you. So the SG spoke about the independent investigation. Can you elaborate on who should do this investigation?
I think let's see what happens. I'm not going to elaborate at this point. James.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've got two questions. First one is a quick follow-up on Sudan. Has the SG had any communications with anybody from the UAE, Saudi Arabia, or Egypt, three countries that might be influential over Khartoum?
Our contacts have been had at various levels with all interested parties.
And I've got an actual question on UNRWA, because we got the briefing in an hour about them. The last time the US envoy, Mr. Greenblatt, was here, he said that UNRWA is actually part of the problem and not part of the solution, and the US is considering closing it as part of, or moves to close it as part of the peace plan it's going to unveil. What does the UN say about that on UNRWA?
Well, I mean, I think on that very day, the Commissioner General, Pierre Cranbuol, responded very eloquently in his defense of UNRWA. The Secretary General has been speaking out in support of UNRWA ever since, for a long time, even when he was High Commissioner for Human Rights. But I think if you look back at what he said in the number of pledging conferences he's attended, whether it's in New York or in Rome, and even more recently, his position remains unchanged, that he very much feels that UNRWA is a stabilizing force in the region. Through the education services it provides, through the health services, and through the support services. UNRWA is not there to provide a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem. It is there. It has a mandate from the General Assembly to provide support to Palestine refugees, and it does just that, and it does it very well. Evelyn.
Thank you, Steph. Is there any update on Cameroon, since a lot of people have been arrested from the opposition and clashes are mounting?
No, I don't have anything today on Cameroon.
Will the SG ever recommend the Security Council deal with this on the agenda?
It
seems to fall in between.
No, we try to report on the humanitarian situation regularly, but I don't have an update for you today. Yes, sir.
Deepak Arora from the Tribune Online. As my colleagues asked the question 30 years down the line on Tiananmen Square massacre, Taiwan President Tsai said today that China not only continues to be unrepentant, but continues to cover up the truth. And similar sentiments were expressed by Secretary of State Michael Pompeo. And he also saluted the heroes of that who wanted to usher democracy there. So would you have anything more to add to this human rights violations?
I would just refer you to the answer I just gave to your colleague, Mr. Bays. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stéphane. You said that the Secretary General this afternoon will submit his proposals to the Assembly on financial crisis. Mm-hmm. Does he recognize that there is a financial crisis at the United Nations, and what is his main proposal to that effect?
I would... The fact that the financial situation of the organization is not great is an open secret. The Secretary General said it. Others have. He will deliver his remarks in an open forum at 3 o'clock to the member states. So I would beg your indulgence until 3 p.m. We can discover his words together. Who hasn't had a turn? Yes, Madame.
Thank you. There's continuous call for help, for humanitarian assistance for both the Venezuelans who have left the country and also the nations that are receiving these migrants. Can you give us a status update of what the UN is doing?
Sure. The Secretary General has appointed, I think, Mr. Eduardo Stein, who is the regional coordinator, who is in charge of the humanitarian response for those countries who are generously hosting Venezuelans who have left Venezuela. Those countries are not only the border countries, but countries further afield in Central and South America. The UN, through various agencies, is present in those countries, trying to help the governments provide support. And within Venezuela itself, we are working with our humanitarian partners within the resources that we have. Mr. Bays.
When I asked you about Tiananmen a short time ago, your answer was a generalised answer, not a specific answer about China. And you know why I'm pressing this, because human rights groups say that the Secretariat is constantly dodging questions about China's human rights abuses. So I'll ask again, does the Secretary-General condemn the Tiananmen massacre? Does he condemn the fact that no one was held to account? Does he condemn the human rights abuses against the Uyghurs? Does he condemn human rights abuses about Tibetans? Yes or no?
I think the Secretary-General has addressed, and we've addressed those issues in various briefings. We've answered those questions. And on the specific...
those questions
and on the issue of Tiananmen, on the particular question, I think I've answered the question to the best of my ability. Madame.
My question is also a follow-up on Sudan, and the question was asked before. So it is not, your answer is not clear to me. So is there a contact with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the Emirates regarding what's going on in Yemen?
My answer to you is that...
not in Yemen, in Sudan.
No, my answer to you, I think is clear, is that we are in touch with all the relevant parties, both inside and outside of the country. Yalla.
I'd try one more time.
Okay.
Is there not some historic resonance here? You are not directly condemning the Tiananmen massacre, and yet at the same time, the Secretary-General is calling for an independent investigation into a massacre that's happened in the last few days in Sudan. Double standards?
No, not double standards. I think the Secretary, we're commenting on things that are happening today, right now, under his watch, and again on the broader issue of human rights in China, I would refer you to things I've said previously. Monica, all yours, should you choose to accept this mission.